welcome to home where faith and family meets. This is Father Tim Donovan, and we are still in quarantine. And so we decided to continue on our reflections with friends. Today, I have on a good friend of mine. He is a Franciscan friar. He lives down in Oceanside, and his name is Brother Antonio Loevno. Welcome. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. Thank you for that fine introduction.
What should I call you
Doing
today?
well here.
Brother? Brother
Brother Tony.
Tony?
Brother Tony said.
Brother Tony. I love it.
Brother Tony said.
Super simple, super humble,
Yeah.
right? Just like St. Francis.
That's what I aspire to.
So how you doing
Yeah.
down there in Oceanside?
Like I said, doing well. I mean, it's a blessing that our way of life does offer that opportunity to really self-isolate or stay at home, as they call it for now. And so it's been good on that sense that we're able to draw on each other here as a community to really foster a sense of like comfort and hope as we move forward through this pandemic, but also a little at odds too with just how the situation is unfolding, but also what it means for us as individuals, but also as a whole, as a church, as society, and so forth and so on. And so, yeah, it's a mixture of many things. But overall, right now, it's been good. Can't say it's been too rocky for us. Mm-hmm.
It's good. It is nice to have a community to lean on. I kind of am reminded maybe of a lot of people who maybe don't have a community right now that they're in. Maybe they're single and they live alone, or how difficult that might be if you're widowed, or all those different experiences that people might be going through right now. But thank God for our communities and for family in this
Mm-hmm.
time especially. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself,
Absolutely.
Brother Tony. Where you from?
Yeah.
How long have you been a friar?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you'd like.
Yeah. Right. So I'm originally, my hometown is Rancho Cucamonga, so San Bernardino County. That's where I come from, and then I've been a friar. I entered the friars in 2016, and did my initial formation up in Santa Barbara at the mission. And since I finished that, since then, and since 2018, I've been in studies here in Oceanside at the Franciscan School of Theology, where I am pursuing my MDiv degree program in preparations and, God willing, towards ordination at some point in the future. But for now, yeah, just here in studies. Mm-hmm.
Nice. When do you
And then,
think you'll be ordained a priest?
well, first I'll have to do my solemn vows, which would probably be in about, give or take, 2-3 years from now. And then ordination shortly after that, within a year after making solemn vows.
Nice.
So yeah, so 3 years or so. Mm-hmm.
Coming quick on your heels.
It is.
I have a
It
confession
does.
to
Yeah. I
make.
mean, uh huh.
I wanted to be a Franciscan too. I don't know if I told you about that. I think I might have in our previous conversations. I looked
Yes.
into you
Mm-hmm.
guys and the CFRs and stuff like that, but I made a really crazy Franciscan decision yesterday.
Oh,
I ended up getting a puppy.
you ended up getting a what again? Sorry.
A puppy. A French bulldog
A
puppy.
puppy.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not sure why I did that, but anyways, here we go. I pick her up on Tuesday. So I'm trying to get my room puppy proof here before Tuesday. So
Oh, I
anyways,
bet. I bet.
I'm gonna give her a little Francis medal to make sure that I'm pray for her
Oh,
protection. She'll get blessed and all sorts of fun stuff. So I love it.
that's
I love the
amazing.
heritages. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna keep it
Yeah,
going in that direction. But
absolutely.
here we
Absolutely.
are, Palm Sunday, ready or not. I always kind of Holy Week kind of always just comes upon us, and here it is. And what strikes me this year more than other years is of the unusual circumstance that we find ourselves in, right? Like I was celebrated a Palm
Mm-hmm.
Sunday Mass last night, and it was just so like usually for me, Palm Sunday is like triumphant, right? Like hosannas and
Right.
like hail this King and hail Jesus and all of these things, and but I just feel like this year it's been kind of just snuck on, and here it is. I don't know how you've been feeling this year.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just been different than previous years for you too.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And given, I mean, the circumstances that we face, I mean, definitely give it a different flair, a different flavor for what it is for now. But yeah, definitely. I mean, it just the weeks passed on by during Lent, and then here we are, Palm Sunday. It's so happened so abrupt, but in a very eventful way that it happened, and the things that we've had to undergo in terms of like adaptations to what this is supposed to look like and feel like. This is
Right.
not there, but here we are.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I just so reminded too that like even though our circumstances are always changing, like what I love about our
Mhm.
church is that it's unchanging. We're like, nope, it is Palm Sunday and it's gonna be Easter Sunday next Sunday. It's not gonna change because we're in the middle of this. Like, but that we have to remember those anchoring truths of our faith, you know. And it
Right.
kind of gives me some sort of hope and some sort of like assurance too, you know, like that even though
Right.
all of this is constantly maneuvering around us in the outside, like we can rely on this. Like we know what this is and we
Right.
know what the promises are, which is a really important thing I think to lean on, especially these days.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely that anchoring that our faith gives us, and our faith has really defines us that we have these very defined moments that we can grasp from and really go forth from. And I think that is a testament, regardless of how things really unfold, or how we can really continue pushing forward in seeking that sense of holiness that God is calling us to. Especially, I mean, even during this time of Holy Week as we're entering that. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think part of the beauty of kind of a cyclic cycle in our churches in different seasons is that in some ways they carry us, right? Like even if we're not ready
Mm-hmm.
for Holy Week, like here we are, and we're going to be carried through it if we just allow ourselves to do that. You know, we have to just maybe give
Absolutely.
permission to God, like God, just take me here. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I don't feel like it, or maybe I whatever. It's just like, but
Mm-hmm.
like lead me through the mysteries, unite myself to you,
Yeah.
um, and so much so I think that our second reading from our readings today, you know, we have that really long reading from the Passion this year from Matthew, but that second reading from
Yes.
Philippians 2, they call it the oldest Christological hymn. They think that's like one of the earliest writings of the New Testament from Paul, one of the earliest
Yeah.
pieces that are committed to writing, and it's a hymn, right? It's
Right. Mm-hmm.
the hymn to Christ, and how beautiful though that kind of self emptying, and that we could self empty so that really we could truly be filled up with Christ, and that's what I think this week is
Mm-hmm.
about for me, is about just like emptying whole, you know, setting it apart, like making a space in my home, in my heart for Christ, so that he could really be somebody who could come in and animate this week for me, rather than like what can I do for you, God, but like rather like God, what are you going to do in me this week, you
Right.
know? um yeah, we were talking a little bit
Absolutely.
earlier
And I
about
think
that. Yeah, go
Jesus.
ahead.
Yeah, and I think Jesus really. I mean, the hymn speaks for itself. But I think this very act that Paul is so deeply moved by and reflecting on this, that Christ, who had all the privileges of full, sets that aside and becomes like us in the human condition,
Mm.
and to really shows us truly what we truly are called to be if we allow ourselves to be like Him, emptied, and let God rest in us. I think just that alone is just very. I mean, it just um, it's so moving for me to like even express it, but that to have Christ model that for us. I think just says and it says and shows us so much into the if we're willing to undergo that sort of conversion, what Christ has modeled for us can really take us to a place like no other.
And I love the word Paul uses in there. He like willingly takes it on, right? Like this was
Right.
something
Mm-hmm.
that he wasn't forced to do. Like the father wasn't
Right.
like, you do this or else. It was like, no, like he was God, but
Voluntary. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love that. Like he took it on himself. And even in Eucharistic prayer for reconciliation one, you know, it talks about that. Like he willingly took on the cross.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
love the difference between like enduring a cross and embracing a cross.
Right.
Because we can endure it, right? But enduring a cross just leads us
Right.
to what? Death, right? But like embracing it, like
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
desiring it, like, saying like, Lord, I accept this, and not just accept it in a sense where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, if I have to, but like really
Mm-hmm.
entering it. And I think that's what Christ gives us that beautiful example of. Like, he enters it out of love. He chooses it for us out of
Right.
love, not out of
Mm-hmm.
some sort of like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to do this for you
Obligation.
guys,
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
like he
Mm-hmm.
willingly emptied himself, and he did that out of love for us. And I think
Right.
his invitation back to us this week is to ask us. He says, will you embrace your cross out of love for me?
Right.
He doesn't force us, right? I mean, we could go through this entire Holy Week and it could mean nothing, right?
Mm-hmm. Which can happen for some, right? Given the circumstances. But I think our faith propels us, or it invites us. It animates that in us to really be proactive in seeking this. As we mentioned, it's girded in love, and if we really carry that through, I mean, it can be profound, even in the current circumstances that we're dealing with. I think, yeah, there's a beauty in that when it's pinned down to this very essence of love, which Christ did in the ultimate sacrifice that's depicted for us in the gospel today.
One of the things that really strikes me every year about our reading of the Passion is all of the different characters that we hear about and their different responses to the Passion of Jesus. We hear about Judas and his betrayal, of course, and his denial of the Lord. We hear about the disciples who were falling asleep in the garden. We hear about Peter's denials, but we also hear about Simon. We also hear about the faithful people who are at the foot of his cross. And the invitation for me
Mm-hmm.
most years is like, man, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I think
Absolutely.
recently I've been like, I'd rather sleep than pray, even though I have all this time. Or I would rather, how much is my relationship with Jesus worth? Like, how much do I sell him for? 30 pieces of silver or less, or have I ever been like Peter, who's like, Lord, I'll never deny you. And there I am, boom,
Mm-hmm.
3 times in a
Mm-hmm.
row. But also all the times that the Lord has allowed me or permitted me to be a Simon to help carry crosses of other people. But I think at the end of the day, the invitation here from Jesus is that he says he wants us to unite ourselves to him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want us just to be spectators or people who remain on the fringes like the other people. He wants us to be united to him in that, to deny ourselves, to pick up our crosses, and to really go and be united to him. I love St. Paul's letter to Timothy. He tells him, he says, you can be assured of this statement. He's like, this is trustworthy. He says that if you have died with him, that you will live with him.
Right.
And I think there was a reason I was named Timothy, because I have to remember that all the time. Like that was for me. Like, you gotta enter this, Tim. Like, you can't just watch. You can't just remain Peter. You can't remain Judas. You can't remain those people. But you have to like desire to enter it, and then that's what's the transformative piece for us in our
Right.
lives.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's a good reflection about today with the gospel, that we are offered all these characters, and their unfolding of how they enter into this experience is so wide and different for each of them. And to even different parts in our faith journey, of times of finding ourselves into any one of these characters, and how, yeah, sometimes it could be life affirming, but that moment of difficulty, or that moment of grief comes in, and like we turn to these other characters. And so it's just this balance. But how am I then proactive to, like, as you mentioned, carry my own cross and seeing it through with the confidence that Christ is carrying this cross with me. And I think that's the beauty of the gospel, and its sadness that it carries of, like, yes, Christ is ultimately crucified, but
Mm.
obviously the beauty that comes out of that is the resurrection, that we are people of new life, that we're not a people that just ended at the crucifixion. But this invitation that really the gospel calls us today is to really enter into the mystery, um, through these characters today particularly, but moving forward, how myself as a Christian, as a friar, as a priest, or whatever it is, um, carry my own cross, and carry it in such a way that it emanates this love that Christ gave. for
That word that really struck me when you were talking was that it carries a sadness. Um,
hmm
like I don't think we should be afraid of that sadness. Many times in my faith journey, I've kind of tried to reject the um, not pretty parts of our faith and
hmm
tried to make it
hmm
not real, like in a sense where it's like, oh, no, let's not think about that part, or like if I'm suffering, then it must not be from God, or all those different things. But like I think more recently, I've just kind of been just raw and honest that all those things, that grace is in all of it, right? That like
Right, absolutely.
grace can move us in our sadness towards seeing what happened to Jesus, like and
hmm
just as much as the joy of Easter Sunday, right? Like, and I think there's a reason that God
Absolutely.
permits us all of these different. It's a very emotional time in the church's life to go through all of these different experiences, like within Holy Week, right? Like, even in today, in traditional sense, it's like Hosanna, King, Hail King, crucify him, right? Like so
Yes.
jarring, like it's like
hmm
the
hmm
same people, and how often that we have those major swings in our life too, and that God is in the midst of all of it, and not just in the good, or not just in the parts that we want him to be in, but like that full
Right.
embrace of the fullness of humanity, like you were saying, like he took on our whole humanity, right? Like not just the
Right.
not just the nice parts where it was like, oh, rainbows and butterflies is so wonderful, but like all
Yes.
of it. And he took on all the hurt too, and he feels all the sadness
hmm
in these moments. And so just like that fullness was, yeah, it's just powerful to me to think about that.
Yeah. And I think that's it's very reflective in the Garden of Gethsemane when Jesus is praying, how he goes right through it. He goes deep into it of feeling that emotion of like, God, I mean, if you really want me, if you can deliver me from this. But in that deep prayer of not only once but twice and three times of confining his own trust and commitment to this, to the will of the Father, it just shows and magnifies how it is only in going through the pain and the suffering that ultimately the rejoicing comes at the end of it. And so it just affirms for us in our own faith journeys that the rockiness will be there as we see it in other parts in scripture. I mean, um, I'm thinking of like when Jesus is out when the disciples are out in the Sea of Galilee and the storm kicks in and the storm is ravaging them and in that moment of difficulty, Christ comes and comforts them. But he goes through it with them. And just like he experiences here in the Garden of Gethsemane, it's just reflective of that humanness that Jesus took it all, not parts, but all of the human condition, which is what we go through. And it just shows that our Christian faith will mature with that and just go with that.
Yeah, that I'm with you. I think that Emmanuel is not just an Advent word, right? Like it is a Lent word too. It is a Holy Week word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like God who's with
Yes,
us and in the midst
God
of
is with
it,
us, right?
like uniting himself to ours. And so I just invite
Mm-hmm.
anyone listening just to don't be afraid of this week. Like just unite whatever you're going through, whether it's the joys or the struggles, the fear, the anxiety, the kind of wanting to keep Jesus at an arm length because we don't want to deal with it. Whatever's going on in your life right now, just
Mm-hmm.
to ask Jesus for the grace of uniting whatever it is to Him, because I think that then Jesus can make us new. Jesus can make this time new, our world new. But most importantly, I think He wants to make our hearts new through this experience of Easter this year, to renew our hope, renew our trust in His promises, and to renew our desire to follow Him above all, trusting that it's
Yes.
not just to lead us to our death, right? But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately to that newness of life with Him. Do you have any final thoughts for our people, brother? Any word of
Yeah, I mean,
encouragement this week?
the yeah, I mean the key word also I think in particularly with Matthew, the evangelist is the newness, the new and improved reality that Christ's passion and resurrection brings us um, into our reality, into our Christian faith is what carries not only carries us through, but redefines us as Christians, that we're called to be converted people of newness, that we should carry that through, that those rough moments build us up rather than at times, yes, it can seem like, yeah, they're bringing us down, but ultimately, if we trust Christ, just as we trusted in the Father, to carry him through that passion, that newness that can blossom from that. I think that for us shows a great deal of God's abundance in His love to really recreate and co-create with Him this newness that we're called to do during this Holy Week as we enter into it. I think there's a beauty in that to really take that into consideration into our meditation this week. That the newness that we can co-create with God in our life, even the circumstances that we're dealing with this pandemic. I think that says a lot.
I love that co-creation, that reality that God is
Mhm.
doing it with us. And in fact,
Mhm.
I don't think he wants to do it without us. He doesn't want to leave us
Right.
behind. He doesn't want us to be feel abandoned in this time, but he wants to be in it with us. So, but he also wants to give us the freedom to invite him into it and to cry out to him in our times of need, especially um, during this very privileged time in our liturgical year, this Holy Week. So, well, I know that my
Absolutely.
prayer, and I'm sure Brother's prayer in his community, as we continue to pray for all of you at the masses that we can go to celebrate, that you're in our hearts, and that the church remains always in the heart of Christ, no matter what she's going through here below, and that promise that the gates of hell will never prevail against her, right? And so that's what the promise I think that
Amen.
we can hold on to in this time above all. Well, thank you, brother, for your time today.
Oh, thank you. It's always a gift that God has given us, gifted us with the opportunity to share a little bit.
Yeah, and I always get inspired too by others sharing, because that's what opens up our heart, right? To like, man, I didn't even consider
Hmm.
that piece about the sadness of it, because I maybe am so try to be optimistic all the time, but it's like, no, like, let's enter
Hmm.
that. So thank you for that, and thank you for
Hmm.
sharing your heart with us today. And our prayers are with you and your community to stay safe out there. Okay.
Likewise, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And to all as well, that we take all into our prayers and seek God's blessing during this time, and also the comfort during this time as well. Hmm.
Thank you, and thank you to all for
Awesome.
joining us
Hmm.
here on Home today. God bless you.